So my name is Klaus Endresen. My day-to-day job is to be the general manager of BW Kudu. So my company, we are developing the Kudu gas field in the extreme southwest of offshore Namibia. I'm also the chairman of NAMPOA.
I'm Msiska. I'm the Secretary General for NAMPOA, but I'm also the chairperson of the Women in Oil, Gas and Energy Network of Namibia.
Well, NAMPOA is the association of the petroleum operators in Namibia, offshore and one onshore. We have been in this business for quite a number of years. You might remember that oil and gas exploration in independent Namibia started in earnest in 1992 with 5 operators. And over the years, the activity level has gone a bit up and down, and now it's very much up. So NAMPOA is the association of the operators in Namibia, operators who are licensed by MME. And the role and the functions is maybe to be an interface between our industry and government and society at large, to promote common interests, common issues for us, the members, but also maybe respond to issues that come from government and society at large.
So currently the association has a total of 16 members, 13 are operators, and then we have 4 associate members. I can just list a few. 4 of them, obviously the super majors, which are Chevron, ExxonMobil, Total Energies and Shell. And then we also have members such as BW Kudu, Custos, Eco Oil, Gulp Energia, Global Petroleum, Impact, Recon Africa, Rhino Resources, Tower Resources, Lotus, and most recently we have Woodside, who've just joined us as a member. And obviously we have NAMPOA, who represents the Namibian government, who are also a member of NAMPOA. And as Dr. Endresen just said, I think the association obviously presents a good platform for all the members to discuss common issues of interest or any concerns that they might have. And then we also use the platform as an information sharing or information exchange platform for our members, where then we can also use that to liaise with government and then also facilitate distribution of information to the public on the industry and the current activities.
I think we engaged in many ways. We are an active participant in conferences.
International Energy Conference.
Yes, that was held in May, I think.
April, yes.
In April. I'm sure we will be involved in the National Local Content Conference that is going to be arranged in Lüderitz in February next year. We participate also in international conferences. We have been with government at Mining in Daba, for example, in Cape Town earlier this year. We have bilateral meetings with government agencies and ministries, primarily, of course, Ministry of Mines and Energy. We have organized a press seminar, not as a press conference, but to actually educate the press on oil and gas. Because if the journalists do not have a reasonable insight into what this industry is all about and how it functions, well, then there is quite a lot of scope for misreporting and misunderstandings, etc. And neither we as an industry nor Namibia are very well served by low-quality reporting. So, and I think Rachel and the colleagues, they are planning a follow-up on this press seminar. We also organized a number of bilateral interactions with the ministries to inform them on oil and gas. Of course, MME, they are fully on top of the whole issue, but you have other relevant ministries. They have no background in oil and gas. So it's important that they also understand what we are doing. Then it's much easier to relate to our industry and then you will see the increase in activity level over the coming years. So they need to be prepared.
That obviously the engagements with government are purely to provide in-depth insights of the industry and what is currently happening. But I also want to highlight that through advocacy, the NAMPOA also provides inputs into legislation or legislation reforms that are currently taking place. We've provided inputs into the draft local content policy, which is currently being workshopped by government, and hopefully we'll have that online soon. We also in the process of providing inputs to the Petroleum Act that's also being revised. So we have a lot of engagements with government officials on your policies and acts such as the NEPA, NIB, where we obviously have to provide inputs, especially where our industry is involved. Then with the seminar with the government or senior government officials, it's just obviously to educate them as well. This includes your agencies as well. We had one previously with a NIBDB, and that was well received, but we feel like we need to take it wider to all the other government institutions, just so they have a better understanding and see how they can also assist the industry and to progress these activities further, and what we can then offer in terms of education and whatever other information is required. I also want to add that NAMPOA is also a proud sponsor of the educational initiatives such as your NAS public lectures, where we are involved previously on a quarterly basis, but this year we've had one, and I think the other one was supposed to take place in November, but it's been postponed, obviously due to other commitments from the members that should be taking part. So there we deliver presentations on NAMPOA and what is happening in the industry and the petroleum activities in Namibia.
I was one of the first ones to be active in the industry here when we started in '92. We then decided to establish something called Petrofund. And each of the oil companies, they, as part of their petroleum agreement, they have to pay an annual contribution to Petrofund. The contributions, they vary between companies, what they have negotiated, etc. But it was decided very early on that the capital should never be touched, but the yield, the interest income to Petrofund of the capital should then be used for scholarships and training activities. So Petrofund has grown into being a very big financial institution for training and education in Namibia. But the point I want to make is that I think the Petrofund board consists of 8 people, about 8 people, and 3 of them are coming from the industry and are being nominated by NAMPOA. So we are, in that sense, we are also active in the Petrofund context. The oil boom is, of course, a result of the activities and the success rate of individual oil companies. NAMPOA as such, we are not an investor, we are not an operator in the sector. So our contribution as an association is more indirect, in the sense that, as Rachel just mentioned, we are very active in trying to get the right framework for these investments and these activities to take place. If you don't have the right legislation, this country will maybe not be as attractive as it should be for investments in oil and gas, as an example. NAMPOA is not a kind of a formal partner with government in any way. We are an association, so we work on a framework. Oil companies speak on behalf of themselves. We as an association do not make statements or analysis or comments on individual companies. And the reason for that is, of course, all news related to gas and oil exploration. It's sensitive in the terms of stock prices. The big companies, they are listed on international stock exchanges, etc. So this type of information can only be released by the individual oil company and the ministry and the government of Namibia. It's not up to NAMPOA to say anything in this respect. Our indirect contribution would be then if we, through our press educational seminars, could ensure that the press actually gets the information correctly and reports it correctly. That's basically the only thing we can do in that sense.
Yep.
Last year, we saw the announcement of major oil discoveries. And people then tend to jump to the conclusion that now it's going to be plain sailing. But there's a big difference between finding oil and finding commercial oil. It depends very much on reservoir characteristics. To make it very, very simple, the reservoir and its content must be so that for each well that you drill, I mean, these things cost more than $1 billion Namibian each, the value of what you get up must exceed the cost of drilling the well. And so the oil companies, they make a discovery and then they do an appraisal program to understand better the reservoir. And that is what's basically happening now by the companies that announced discoveries last year. So I think it's prudent to wait for the official formal conclusions of the appraisal phase before one makes too precise statements and forecasts for the future. But when and if a positive result of appraisal has been made, then of course there is a certain lead time, because you have to manufacture the equipment you want to use. You don't know necessarily which equipment that will be used for the individual wells. Will it be an FPSO probably, or will it be a pipeline coming to shore, etc. But all these things take a few years to plan and construct. I don't want to put a number on the number of years or which year it will take place, but it will take quite a while.
I think to add to that, what would be good is to have the revised Petroleum Act in place so that it can obviously facilitate the progress of these operations or activities.
The investments that will be made in Namibia, provided good results from the appraisal program, etc., they all also depend on the fact that we have a very good understanding of a comfortable environment to make these huge investments, because you're talking about many billions of US dollars that will have to be invested. And if one is not quite clear or sure what is a framework, then there might be some reluctance on the investment side. Because you must remember that in our industry, first of all, we take exploration risk. Globally, you can say that if you drill an exploration well in a new area, your chance of success is maybe less than 20%. I think we are probably the only industry in the world that would spend maybe $1 billion Namibian on drilling a well where the probability of failure is more than 80%. The huge amounts and huge certainties. We take a lot of market risk. During COVID, the oil price was for a short while negative. Over the last couple of years, oil price has hovered around maybe $80 per barrel. At some stage, it was 120 barrels. There's a huge risk in the market. And then we have risks during the construction phase. Did we pick the right technical solution, or do you have to redo it? Are there going to be major delays, etc.? All those are risks that we in the industry, we take with open eyes, not necessarily very happily, but we take these risks with open eyes. But the playing field must be clear. So if we make an investment now, that we want to develop an oil field, it will take some few years to develop it, and then it shall be in production for 20 years. We need to know what's the fiscal framework, for example. that will rule that investment for so many years into the future. So it's a very, very important point that Rachel has. The legislation and the formal and the fiscal framework must be conducive and must be clear and fixed.
Also considering the tighter and more stringent hydrocarbon financing available right now with the energy transition and the move to more sustainable energy. If
the formal framework is in place, legislation, the dissemination of correct information, the reporting to the public, the government has a right understanding of what the oil and gas industry is all about, etc. I think those will be our contributions. We don't decide anything, you know. We can just advise and provide information.
I think a perfect place to start is the petroleum agreements that are being negotiated between the operators and government. Perhaps to look at how Namibian companies can benefit, and this is in the form of making sure that these operators make use of Namibian companies, local companies, for supplies or services. But obviously that would mean Namibians need to prepare themselves. There's quite a long lead time, as Dr. Endresen has just described, between discovering and then perhaps enter into joint ventures with more experienced international companies who have the capacity, and then just finding out or liaising with the operators to see how they can get involved and actually derive some value from these discoveries and these the operations related to the oil and gas industry.
The lead time is actually quite important. It's I mean, you can say that it's a pity that it will take a while before Namibia gets some oil revenue, but the flip side of that is also that it gives local companies quite good time actually to prepare themselves, not only strategic positioning, but you know, upgrade their skills, find the partners that you talked about, and so on. So, the resource curse, I think it's to a large extent a function of the framework within which we work. One example of a resource curse in Namibia would be if manpower, institutional capacity, etc., were diverted away from other economic sectors to the petroleum sectors. You know, nobody wants to be fishermen anymore. They all want to work on supply platform vessels and drilling rigs, etc. That's a resource curse. You know, that one sector overshadows other sectors. That's very, very dangerous. But I don't think that is easy for NAMPOA to prevent that this will happen. I think this lies very much on how government handles the whole thing, and it's of course an interface with the local content policies that will have an impact on this. So if the local content policies kind of stimulates too much reallocation of focus and resources from other sectors to the oil and gas sector, then that is not very good for the country. So one must have a balanced and pragmatic approach to the whole issue.
And I think it also obviously depends on, in the end, how government spends the revenue derived from the resource, and how it's plowed back into the communities and to serve our nation.
I think first of all, one must accept the premise that oil is going to be with us for quite a number of years. Oil is very often thought of as a transport fuel, which of course it is. But oil and hydrocarbons are so much an integral part in our environment, in what we consume. You know, my watch, my glasses, probably my shoes, you know, the TV screen, this one, you know, paint on the floor, walls, etc. There are hydrocarbon components in all of this that comes from oil and gas. So if you accept the premise that oil is going to be with us for a long time, then the next question is who should produce this oil? And I think it would be grossly unfair that Africa should curtail its oil production because of the rich countries having polluted the rest of the world. Global CO2 emissions from Africa is kind of a couple of % of the global. And Namibia is very, very far down on that statistic again. So why should Namibia hold back on oil production? It does not really make sense. Somebody would produce that oil, why not Namibia? And secondly, the oil and oil revenue, when and if it comes, it will be a tremendous muscle in the Namibian economy to help uplift all the Namibians, the big population who is now without access to energy, they live in poverty, etc. I mean, the oil and gas sector provides a tremendous potential for a general socio-economic uplift in Namibia. And there is, talking about gas, there is no paradox that we should produce gas in Namibia and also pursue renewable energy. Gas would be used for, in our case, in BW Kudu, for electricity production. That's stable, quality electricity. And the sun doesn't shine all the time in Namibia. I mean, even in Namibia, maybe a photovoltaic plant would maybe be productive 35% of the time. Leaderids with world-class wind facilities, maybe 55% of the time, and with very intermittent frequencies and availability. So gas to power is actually an enabler for more renewable energy in Namibia. And the third element, if I should continue to talk about gas, is that we import more than 60% of our electricity from 3 countries that are all load shedding at home: South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. And the dominant majority of the electricity from South Africa is based on coal, which is a heavy pollutant. So if you replace this electricity with a mixture of renewables and gas-fired electricity, we actually will reduce significantly the CO2 imprint of electricity consumption. We will not increase it, we will reduce it.